Welcome to Trailblaze, where I introduce you to some of the innovators and game changers that you should know. Over the past 2 decades as a founder, investor, and host, I've had the privilege of meeting incredible individuals that are having a positive impact on the world. Join me as I sit with these leaders and innovators that are trailblazing their own path as they share their stories of the resilience built and the wisdom gained along the way. Enjoy the episode.
Sabrina, have you had a long journey as an entrepreneur from a really young age, serial entrepreneur, and are now building a very big business globally? It's obviously been not a straight line, some great news, some bad news along the way, a roller coaster. Can you talk a little bit about the journey?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think as an entrepreneur, everyone has ups and downs. If anyone said, oh, it's a smooth line as an entrepreneur, I think they would be lying completely.
Yeah.
Or
delusional.
Yeah. And so when people ask me, can you talk to my daughter about being an entrepreneur, my son? I say, okay, just don't do it. And that's how we'll start. You have to be
I'll
little
talk to you about
bit.
It. Be super quick. Don't.
Yeah. You have to be a little bit insane to do it. So I think this company in particular, and I can talk about all the different companies, but this one in particular, I think most challenging for me, one during COVID. So it's been a struggle, I would say, to raise money virtually. So financing a company, doing Zoom meetings, it's not as personal, and so it's hard. I would say financing a company in one of the worst markets of our lifetime, mine and yours. So also an uphill battle, and underestimating financing the company as a female CEO. So I think now the statistics are 3% of women get venture money. And it's going down, not up. So definitely a hurdle for me.
It's actually shocking in today's era, but very few people know that stat. So it's great to get it out there. It's shockingly low.
For sure. Yeah. And so for us, I think there's times when I think, okay, I'm going to quit and put a male CEO and we'll do better. Yeah. So, maybe this is an alternative. But we've been really lucky, kept pushing, tried hard, raised our first 10 million US, and so off to the races now.
Amazing. So back to your early career as a lawyer, and that's when we met. Actually, you were a lawyer at Castles, and our mutual friend Ralph Lean, I think, introduced us.
That's right.
How did you end up there at Castles, and what was the first thing you started from there?
So I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. I started my first business at 18. We talked about it, and so I knew I wanted to do it. My mom, who's also an entrepreneur, was completely against me being an entrepreneur. So counterintuitive, you would think, she would encourage you to follow in her footsteps. No. And for a long time, we fought about it, and I said, Mom, I really want to do this. Like, why are you pushing me into a different career path? And what I didn't realize at the time was she was a female a long time ago in construction, and so she was probably facing an uphill battle of her own that she was trying to insulate me or protect me from. And I didn't realize that. I just fought with her and said, no, that's what I'm going to do.
I'm going to do it.
Yep, I'm going to do it. Yeah. And so she said, no, you're going to school. In fact, not you're just going to school. You're going to get a post-secondary degree. And so I said, fine.
You're going to be a lawyer and you're staying
you have
clear
no
of
option.
construction.
That's right. That's exactly it. And so I went to law school and started practicing law and realized very quickly, this is not for me. I probably told you that the first time I met you. Yep. Yeah. And so right after I summered, I said, I'm not going back as an articling student. I'm not going back as an associate. I'm not going back. And I continued to go. So 10-year stint on Bay Street. But the whole time there, I probably thought about things that were different than lawyers thought about. So yes, I gave legal advice. Of course, that was my job. But I was thinking when I was reviewing an M&A deal or a corporate commercial agreement, from a business perspective, why are you doing it this way instead of this way? And so this doesn't make sense. And the other thing I think I thought about very often was the business of the firm. And why does a firm operate this way? Why don't we have more virtual offices? And in fact, I ended up shifting to Axiom, which is a completely virtual firm, but a firm that I followed from a long time before I joined them, because I thought that business model made more sense financially than the business model that traditional
firms run. So with Fero now, you're using a virtual firm.
We are, yeah. So we have in-house counsel. We use bricks and mortar law firm, but yes, we'll rely on virtual firms to scale up and scale down as appropriate. Wow. And so I think the focus for me as an entrepreneur was always there. And my first opportunity to get out, I got out and, started building a business.
Well, that's an interesting point because a lot of people always talk about seeing these opportunities, thinking about making that leap. And even if they think it's in their DNA, they never actually make the jump. So what was the moment when you said, okay, I'm actually done?
I think I knew for a long time. I think having a salaried position and making decent money is always hard to leave. No matter what you are, who you are, I know I'm making good money every year. It's consistent. It's going up every year. I get my bonuses. And so things are stable and there's stability. And then my mom got sick. My mom ended up having stage 4 sarcoid, so it affected her lungs, and she needed a double lung transplant. And I had to take time off. And taking that time off gave me the opportunity to say, I always wanted to leave. I didn't have the opportunity. Now I'm out, and so I'm going to pivot. Would I have done it if she didn't get sick? I don't know. I think so. I still would have done it. But it gave me the sort of catapult to do it probably sooner than I may have done it.
How about otherwise?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, and that obviously consumed a lot of your time. And so when you're thinking about life-work balance, since your mom has gotten sick, how have you been able to manage that? And you've obviously started now Fero in that midst of that as well.
Yeah,
aside from COVID.
So aside from COVID, so when she was in hospital, so she was sick for about 4 years. Now she's obviously much better post-transplant, still not perfect, but going up. But it was really challenging. So I had started my previous business, just started. She went into respiratory arrest, died, went on life support, and I was sleeping in hospital with her.
Oh my God.
And I had to close a land deal, very large land deal that we had put the deposit on. I had personal guarantees on, and I had to close in the middle of her transplant week. And there was no option. And so you just have to dig in. Of course, I was there for my mom. And the moments that I needed to be on the phone, I just needed to go in the hallway, sit on the windowsill, talk on the phone, deal with the deal, and then go back and just sort of compartmentalize what was happening at the time.
And that word is something that people like across all industries and of all walks of life really struggle with. How did you compartmentalize?
It's almost, I would say, an innate ability. I just knew I had to do it. And so I'm a type of person where I say, okay, what is being an entrepreneur? It's not the smartest, it's not the most knowledgeable, but it's the relentless pursuit of what you want to achieve. That relentless pursuit. And so that relentless pursuit drove me to say, in this 15 minutes or this half an hour, I just need to focus on this. It's one foot in front of the other. It's not how do I get from this point to the end. It's just one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, one day at a time, and making it. And so for me, it was just half an hour. I just need to focus on this for half an hour, and then I'm going back. And that's essentially how I did it.
But bringing, for me, it would be such a challenge not to bring all the emotions associated with in your case, your mom, bring those into those conversations and then be second guessing yourself in that. So I don't know if I would have been able to do it.
Yeah, so I would say the benefit was there was no video calls at the time, and so it was easier to hide emotion. No one's looking at you or can tell your eyes are watering while you're talking. And of course, it doesn't go away. I don't forget, I'm sitting in the hospital on a call. I know my mom's in the ICU in a few rooms away from me, and so you're emotional. And sometimes I think it's the extreme focus, just that extreme nature of the focus that you have for that small amount of time when you're in it, where you almost forget the setting that you're in or what's happening around you for an instant, and you're able to just get through it.
Yeah, and actually having the ability to focus your mind like that takes a lot of mental discipline. Do you meditate? How do you get yourself into a place where you can have that kind of mental discipline?
So I would say resilience for sure is top of mind for any entrepreneur. I mean, you get told no, things happen, things go sideways, things go wrong, and it's just that resilience. I try to meditate. I'm not good at it because I'm not the type of person who can sit still for very long. So very difficult for me. But I do work out. I try to work out 5-6 days a week. I find that helps. The more I work out, I find the calmer I am. And then it's just the end goal, that focus on the end goal and where I want to go, and just not forgetting about that in everything that I do helps me have that focus.
So in the middle of all the challenges with your mom and health here in hospital, was it closing that land deal was what the end goal was you were focused on, or was there sort of bigger things still in mind?
So for sure the bigger picture was in mind, but I knew all I had to do was this now, and that was bite size. It was achievable and attainable because it was just that. I think if I had focused on I need to do this, and then I need to close a financing, I need to do a shareholders agreement, I need to buy equipment, I need to bid on tenders, I need to do all these things, I don't think I would have been able to do it. It was just, this is a small goal in that moment. It's small, it's attainable. I can do it 1 foot in front of the other, 1 hour at a time. I will get there. And then once that's done, okay, what's the next one in bite-sized portions? Otherwise, I think it's too hard.
One of the things that's amazing about your story as well is you have had a whole bunch of your own health challenges along the way, ongoing.
Ongoing, yeah.
What do you say to people that, are trying to overcome these types of issues that you like? First of all, can you share some of it?
Sure, absolutely.
And how are you overcoming it?
Yeah, so I have ulcerative colitis. I get IV treatments every 8 weeks for it. So it can be an uphill battle. You have good days and bad. I think for me, and might not be the right way for everybody, but I ignore that I have it. So I'm fine. I'm not sick. Everything's good. I get through the day. Obviously, there's times in the day where maybe you're not feeling well. And, I think being honest about it. It's being honest about it that helps me get through it. Like my team knows. They know, I might be having a bad hour.
Right.
And so it's okay. And knowing that it's okay to not be 100% all the time or not have to give a facade all the time. I think social media sometimes, I'm not an enormous fan of it all the time, but I think there's facades. People put on facades. This is my life. It's not your life. It's not perfect. It's hard. Things are up and down. Things are difficult. And so for me, I think sharing that it's hard for me some days and it's okay that it's hard, helps me to keep going.
Well, I think a big part of that is having the confidence actually in yourself and to share with your team. Like as much as there's a whole bunch of business challenges happening, there are personal challenges. And I think in many ways it makes you more relatable. When you actually say to people, look, this is the reality of what I'm dealing with. And you're transparent about that and you're inclusive with the team in that, I feel like people just get behind you that much more. And get behind the overall mission that much more because it's real.
It's real, and I think it helps them believe in themselves too. Like nobody's perfect. As much as we want to say we're perfect, none of us are. All of us have faults in different ways or personal challenges in different ways. Someone might be going through a divorce. Someone might have a sick child. There's always something going on. And so I think it allows people to feel like my personal circumstances are okay. I can still work and deal with my personal circumstances. I can still balance. I can still get through the day. And if I talk about it and maybe they can talk about it with me. They feel comfortable talking about it with me. I can help share my experiences. They can share theirs, and we grow together, both individually and as a company.
You're building stronger relationships with your team that way. But it is counter to a lot of sort of great CEO mantra, right? It's like you need to show up with conviction, determination, strength, the right body language, the look in your eyes like nothing's going to stop us, the invincibility, all these things. So like being able to have vulnerabilities and show those vulnerabilities, I think is a really great strength, but it runs against a lot of CEO mantra out there.
So I totally agree. And I would say, am I more positive? Absolutely. Do I say we're going to do it against all odds? Absolutely. And I believe that, and so I think even being sick, I'm not depressed about it. I say it's okay. We can still do it. And I think that's where it aligns with a lot of other CEOs saying that against all odds or no matter what, a downturn economy, a health issue, these things, we're still going to push ahead. We're going to be positive. We're going to work through it like individually and as a team, and we will make it work. And so I think the mantra is the same. It's just we do it in a different way.
Right. Well, contrary to your mom's wishes, you did become an entrepreneur. And you did enter the construction industry and now manufacturing with Fero.
Yes.
Okay, we've talked about this a lot. Yeah. This is male dominated. There's a lot of bro culture going on. Yep. You're crushing it in the face of that.
Trying.
So what's going on? How are you beating these guys? How are you confronting it?
It's hard. I mean, anybody as a female in a male-dominated industry who tells you it's not hard is lying. With 100% certainty is lying. It's always an uphill battle. For me, I always say it's noise. And so whatever happens around me, is noise, and it doesn't really matter. And, yes, there's people who advocate for women's rights and all these things, but my job is to run my company, to show value to my shareholders, and to make sure everything's right. And so, again, that extreme focus on the goal, I treat all the other stuff that occurs outside as noise. And so, I know you want me to share stories. There's a million stories that I can tell you about. Something so simple as being on an investor meeting, often all men, as you can appreciate, and one of the guys saying, "Turn your camera on, I want to see you," right? And while it might seem innocent, and I have thick skin,
but it's really not.
Right.
It's really fucking weird.
It's weird. And, and then he turns his camera on. "Oh, look where I am. Why don't you come join me here?" And, you're sitting in a professional business meeting asking for money. And so it makes it even more awkward, the situation. But it happens. And for me, I just keep moving forward. It's noise. I understood it happened. I get, yes, people need to advocate against these type of things, but I keep moving forward. That's my goal. That's what I need to do, and that's what I do. What I find most interesting, though, is no other guy on the phone said anything. And so for me, I think, okay, there's all these other men on the phone. Maybe someone could have said, "Why she needs to turn her camera on?" Something so simple that could have changed the dynamic of how that conversation was. But it's like I get thrown to the wolves.
Right.
You figure it out.
I wonder how many men thought it.
Right.
That would be an interesting question. Is are we at least in a place in today's society where at least people are starting to think about it? Like, well, that was not cool. That was not a good thing to do.
For sure.
And then maybe we're getting to a place, hopefully one day, where people all say, not good.
Not good, right.
Yeah, and then hopefully a place where, like, you're fired. Like, you're obviously not, you don't belong here, right? And, but I agree with you. It's I don't know what I would have done, actually.
Right.
When I really think about it, I most definitely would have identified it as wrong.
Right.
But would I have, interrupted the whole flow of the meeting? I don't know if I would have. If it was something overtly offensive, I most definitely would have. Right. But it was just like this guy being a douchebag, and now I know he's that, and now I know I'm not going to deal with this guy ever again. I might not have said anything.
And then the difficult part for me is I can't say anything.
Yeah.
Because if I said something, that conversation's
all sorts
over.
Of judgments, right? It's, all sorts of judgments. Right.
It's over, and it's over forever, and it's never going to change. And so, when my job is to protect the company, I need to protect the company first, right? So,
one of the things that I think that I've learned that you, over the years, that you do really well is you are often in a place where you're immensely underestimated. And I don't know if it's sort of like, I almost feel like in some ways you relish that position a little bit.
I do.
Because you really, then you go for the jugular,
Yep.
right? I've seen you go for the kill. We've talked about deals where you've literally gone for the kill. The most recent one, we were talking about this bigger financing you're working on, that you're clearly going for the kill. Yep. But people are underestimating you all around. Are you deliberately putting yourself into that position, or are you landing there? Is it because of gender or in a male-dominated industry? How do you get into that place? And am I right that you actually relish it a bit and you kill from it?
So I love being underestimated. I loved it in law. I love it in business. It serves you well because you're underestimated. It allows you to maneuver more. Do I go there intentionally? I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, I might, but I don't believe I do. But my mom came from construction. My grandfather came from construction. And so it's what I know and what I love. And so I'm drawn to it. Yes, my first business was in fashion, furniture, etc. But I've always been drawn to land and building and these type of things because that's what I grew up around. Yeah. So sort of always wanted to go in that direction. But I think what drives me is the next challenge. It's I've achieved this, and what can I do next to achieve this and achieve this? And so I may put myself in difficult situations because I want to achieve more. And I think that's the answer to why I do the crazy things I do.
Yeah. Well, and in terms of being underestimated, I was a CEO at a young age in the telecom industry, and I was routinely underestimated. And I actually really loved being in that position. Yeah. Because you really actually puts you in a position of strength, actually, and an enormous negotiating leverage. And people just end up making mistakes around you. And the longer you can hold out being in that position, the better. But I do expect at some point people are going to finally realize, okay, Sabrina, we better just stop. Okay, because we're getting run over too much by her at some point. I assume people maybe they won't figure it out though. Maybe this is going to go on because this has been going on for many years.
It's going on for a long time. I think
Yeah.
it's closer now.
Cool.
And I say, okay, why is it closer? Why do people know more? I have more visibility now than I ever have. And
Yeah.
so there's a little bit more hesitation, or even reputationally, people say, oh, she's a really good negotiator.
Yeah.
And so, they
Yeah, right.
kind of hesitate a little bit. But like you, I hope it goes on forever. I'm
Yeah,
happy.
right.
I wear pink. So
Yeah, right.
it goes on as long
Yeah,
as
right.
possible.
You are. So it is a little bit self-perpetuating. You're a little bit of perpetuating yourself
for
on
sure.
it. Fero. Okay,
Yes.
like the mission for Fero. How did you come to there's so many elements that are interesting about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, like the global environmental benefits, the construction, like the overall industry benefits, the general welfare benefits, the almost altruistic philanthropic mission of it.
Yep.
All of it. How did you come up with it, and why are you doing it?
So I had sold my previous business right when COVID hit. Okay, I'm fairly young. What am I supposed to do? Stare at the walls? I have to do something.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and it affected my family in a particular way. So you know about my mom, you know about me. My brother's an anesthetist. My sister-in-law's a nurse. They had a young baby at home. My grandfather passed away during the first wave. And it was the first time I couldn't stay in hospital with him. And so for me, I looked at the picture and I said, there's something wrong. I need to do something. And so like an entrepreneur, like we talked about, you can't be fully sane. I said, I'm going to build an ICU. Like I know nothing about
this,
anything,
yeah.
but this is what I'm going to do. And in some ways it started more, like you suggested, philanthropic, to say, I want to
Yeah.
help, I want to do something.
Yeah.
But I started to reflect more on the state of the world, what was happening, pandemics, pandemics, epidemics, more natural disasters, more war, harder economies. And what I came to realize is that when critical infrastructure goes down, we can't replace it. And so while we've made all these amazing technology advances, like we haven't found ways to build infrastructure faster, better, more effectively, and that lasts a long time. We built the pyramids before our lifetime. They stand today. Now we can't build a bridge.
Right.
It doesn't last.
Right.
And so how could we replace critical infrastructure quickly and cost effectively without ever compromising quality or care? And so I said, we can do this. We're going to start in healthcare. This is the crisis of today. We're going to start building modular hospitals and deliver quickly and cost effectively to the people who need it most. And then we're going to move to other things.
What does modular mean in this context?
So for us, it's lots of different ways to say it. Prefab, made in factory versus on the construction site. But the way I like to explain it, which my COO hates, so I'm going to say it just to bother him.
Well, and you're talking to a layperson.
Well, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
But I call it Lego for humans.
Okay.
So that's what modular means to me. They're little units.
Shit, even I can understand that.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So they're units that connect together to make a bigger building. And it's made in a controlled environment with somewhat more controlled supply chain, more environmentally friendly because you're making it without trips going back and forth, and you're controlling everything in and out, labor staying put in one spot. You can build all year. We are in winter. We're in Canada.
right.
So,
And so the ICU in that first use case, is it like shipped literally ready to go to anywhere in the world?
Anywhere in the world. So we build it what we would call turnkey, so modular and turnkey. And so we build out the whole room. We build it to building code. So a lot of the things you saw during COVID, people put up tents. Well, fine, tents are good, triage, etc., but they're not to building code. And so really, we are building a real hospital room to real building code that can go anywhere in the world, when it's needed. We're never going to be a first responder. You're never going to deliver, I would say, Fero's ICU to a crisis and be first in. A tent's always going to be first in, or the harder to reach areas. But Ukraine has no hospitals left. And so we will rebuild faster than any other builder, any other regular contractor on. It'll take them 10 years to rebuild a hospital. But we can have a fully functioning to code hospital down in less than a year for the people of Ukraine to use when they're ready.
So they've set up tents. There's a triage mode happening. In that example, you're on the ground in inside a year with modules that add up to a
full hospital,
full-size hospital.
You got it. So you would have ICU rooms, ward rooms. You can have operating theaters, your hallways, your washrooms, your change rooms, family waiting rooms, the whole anything you can think of.
What does that look like in your factory then? So are you like, and how does it get shipped? Like in terms of like physical footprint for an ICU. I mean, I envision some ICUs that I've been in. I mean, are giant. So these necessarily small, or are they add-on blocks? Is it truly like Lego?
So I think it's truly like Lego. So we build both multiple systems, but out of shipping containers, and then we build custom enclosures. And so we can build oversized units. And so shipping can be tricky depending on where it's going. Obviously, the further it's going, if it's going overseas, you want to stay within that shipping container footprint because it's easy to ship.
Right, on shipping, and it is to that standard form factor.
Yep, and you can fit right in there. You also have to consider if it's going to the north, there's ice roads. Or if you're transporting oversized, you need oversized permits. And so we're always considering what's the footprint that we can build the fastest to be able to ship the easiest, but still work, still meet code, still work. And so that's always a driving factor in terms of the size that we build to.
ICUs, all those other elements of hospitals, you're not only doing it in, as you say, in a more environmentally sustainable way, like limiting trips with quality not compromised, but there's also a huge cost advantage from what I've understood from you.
In a business, I would say nobody ever wants to compete on price because everyone says, no, you're just a race to the bottom. And so we are cost effective and our quality's better. And so we're providing a better product at a better price in order to meet demands. And so what does that do for us? We're able to meet demands or to deliver healthcare to people who couldn't otherwise afford it. So someone might not be able to spend $10 billion to build a hospital, and that's what it costs. But we could deliver a fully functioning hospital at a fraction of the cost. And it beats a hospital standards, and they can use it. And so that's what we're trying to achieve.
Aside from disaster areas, though, there's a really interesting application that you and I have talked about in terms of just improving healthcare in rural areas.
Yes.
You know, where they're off the grid, and around Africa, where there isn't necessarily a disaster happening, but they literally have no healthcare.
Yes, and so we talked about, I think you and I talked about Amazonia, 2,000 miles to fly to the closest hospital. Right. So these are the applications that we really want to achieve. And I think with, we talked about, you love technology, I love technology. I think with the interconnection between technology and healthcare growing now, what Fero does, and we say we are technology agnostic, so we are a smart hospital. We have camera, audio, telemedicine, VR that can be integrated into the system, which can help with the delivery of remote healthcare even more than, you know, a traditional bricks and mortar hospital can.
How do you manage your own quality control with all these different suppliers? I mean, there's got to, I mean, I don't know, is there 1,000 suppliers into a modular ICU? I mean, how do you maintain your own supply chain?
Yeah, so supply chain management is key. I think supply chain management, COVID is key. For me, you need a dedicated supply chain management team. It's extremely important. What COVID allowed people to realize is that domestic manufacturing is extremely important, and we lost domestic manufacturing. And so for me, this is a white space that I'm taking advantage of because it's there and it's open and we can. And so what we're looking for is other domestic manufacturers who we can integrate their products into what we're doing. And it allows me to see, do they follow the same ESG principles as us? Are they paying a fair wage or a living wage? All of these things. And I can go see, touch, and feel right around me what they're doing. Also, you need to hedge. You can't just have one supplier for every product, because if that supplier goes down, you're in big trouble. So you have supply chain hedging. You have plan A, B, C. If you watch Formula One, which I love, you hear on the team radio, we're going with plan B. Sometimes you need to go with plan B. And so, but all to say, I think that supply chain management piece is extremely important to any business today.
Where's your favorite race in the F1?
Oh, I don't know. I maybe want to say Monza. I'm Italian. It's
I was thought that would have to be your answer.
So Monza for sure.
When you think about the next steps for Fero beyond healthcare, we've talked about a lot of this, but where are you going to go next? You know, and it's just such a great business model. So many countries need this. Yeah. And so I'd like to talk to you about how you actually do a sale too, because you're talking about governments. You're talking about, you know, incredibly long sales cycle. You're talking about big tenders, huge sales cycles, complex sales cycles, wide number of different stakeholders that are, you know, many probably against you, many probably with you, many moving around in terms of their own motivations, not necessarily the most, call it openly democratic and transparent regimes
Yep.
that you're dealing with. So there's a whole lot going on there. Can you unpack some of that?
Yeah, so that's a loaded question for sure. There's a lot there.
Right.
But let's start with sales.
Yeah.
So yes, sales cycle to government is extraordinarily long. It is sometimes even me, who's been doing government contracting for a very long time, underestimates it. On the flip side, though, we recently submitted a tender that had a 6-week closing period. We asked them for extension. They said no. We submitted, and somehow we won. And so that was a really fast quasi-government sale to a hospital.
Well, it's like lightning pace.
Shocking and unusual. And so what we've done is filled the pipeline. You need to fill the pipeline. It needs to come from somewhere. So we filled the pipeline with what we understood. Yes, there's lots of government contracts, NATO contracts. There's all kinds of international things that are happening. Obviously, for us, we're domestic. We focus on domestic first and then look to expand. But we thought about where can our infrastructure be used that's not necessarily a government sale. That's a faster turnaround time than us selling to government, which takes a long time. And so mining communities, so more corporate social responsibility. In mining, they got hit hard by COVID, and we can deliver health infrastructure to mining communities. So those are shorter sales cycle because it's private, and obviously mining companies have money and they can spend it fast. And then military, well, that's a longer sales cycle also. But military to this point has had, let's call it a tent culture. And although they have the capabilities in the military to use cranes and transport shipping containers, they haven't necessarily shifted all their infrastructure to that, but they're starting.
Okay.
And so, we're looking at military and how we can break into the military market and sell there.
So the water thing is so interesting because there's obviously I forget the stat. I think you told me at one point like a couple billion or more people do not have access to clean water consistently.
Right.
And a significant, 1 billion something, like never have access to it. So is that the initial focus? And a lot of those governments obviously are, unfortunately, don't have the resources even potentially to pay you, don't have the sophistication even to find you. So how does that look? How do you get fresh water to the 2 billion people that need it?
So we actually started, one of our shareholders, or one of my partners who we work with, had a device that he had built and patented that was a one power system. So it had power, you could have water, HVAC, etc. And so it was essentially you would send it to an emergency situation and could deal with these things. And so we looked at it and thought, okay, we can do something with this. It's sort of sitting on the shelf, but we want to actually do something. This is a brilliant system that can be deployed.
Is all this just-in-time manufacturing, by the way, of these units? Or sort of
Yeah, so there's some people who stockpile modular units and sell them or lease them. I've looked at the financial model. I love math. I love numbers.
You're just caring about inventory with, maybe a government makes a decision, maybe never, maybe in 2 years.
Right. And so
you just have gotten the time manufacturing down.
I got it. Yeah, you got it.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And though for me too, looking at the leasing model, a lot of the companies, yes, they make money, but they're 9 times leveraged or 10 times leveraged. And so I start to look at that and say, well, I can sell our infrastructure to you guys if you need them. You can work with us as leasing partners to lease it out, and can work that way. So I would say, yes, it's more just in time, and we're more purpose built. So the difficulty of building, so if I build a module, I don't know where it's going. Something so simple as if it's going to Europe versus North America, the electrical codes and plugs are different. So I can't stockpile units for the whole world that work in the whole world. And so we're more purpose built. Something happened, we need to rebuild as fast as possible. Let us rebuild.
Right. And because you're not trying to fill that gap of the tent, the first responder gap.
You got it.
Right. But then ultimately, in that Ukrainian example, is the way to think about it then after the 5 years or 10 years when the hospital is actually built that you would be rotated out and reclaim that unit and deploy it elsewhere? Or do you actually envision like some of these, like this actually is a much longer than 5-year, 10-year solution? It's a forever.
It could stay for a very long time. It could also be moved. So if a hospital is rebuilt in the city, but the rural hospitals are taking longer, we can move the whole infrastructure to somewhere else that also needs it and leave it there for a number of years and move again. And so the infrastructure, I would say, is smart. It's intentionally built to be reusable, movable, sustainable, have longevity to it. But like I said, never compromise quality.
Yeah. A lot of people might say, with all these initiatives going on, that you're
too much.
Yeah, you're like all over the place.
Yep. Yeah.
So how do you respond to that?
Yeah. So I mean, and I hear that. I hear that
Yeah.
sometimes in investor meetings. Oh, there's too much going on.
Yeah.
If you just do healthcare, I'm happy with that.
And it's already a $10 trillion, whatever it is globally. It's some staggeringly huge number. And this is, I don't know what the addressable market is of a modular. I mean, I don't know, is your addressable market 100 billion? It's a huge.
It's 150 billion. It's massive.
Yeah, right,
and then emergency management, 255 billion. So these are big markets. Obviously, it's not all my addressable market, but they're big markets. And yes, there's a lot of white space and there's a lot of things to do. So I would say we've focused healthcare. So healthcare doesn't matter what units we build. We build hospitals, we build labs, we build, could build long-term care homes. The shell, it doesn't matter.
Right.
The shell is the same. We have our HVAC system. We know what we're doing. The building system is the same.
Electrical
Is similar.
Yeah.
So it's only the interior finishing that changes. And so it's not as complex as you would say building a Ferrari versus building a Fiat. Like, it's not that far apart, and so it's simple. On the flip side, the other things that we build are also modular. So the shell, again, is very similar to what we're building here, and the inside is slightly different. And so for me, it seems simple. I think I need to do a better job at explaining how closely they're tied together, or how closely the manufacturing is tied together, to help investors get their head around that. But then I look at other companies like a Philips, right? And they have 3,000 products, and 3,000 products all over the place. And so I think, okay, we have 5. Yeah, so it's really not that much when you break it down.
How many competitors do you have? Who are they?
So I would say the competitive landscape's pretty wide. So you go from tents on one hand to sophisticated infrastructure, so sophisticated modular infrastructure or smart buildings on the other hand. And so there is a large spectrum. I would say it ranges from about 100,000 US a unit on the tent side, so what I call kids camping tents, all the way to 800,000-900,000 USD a unit on the smart hospital side, which gets into the range of traditional building. And so why do we need to go there? On a per foot basis, you mean? A per foot basis.
Interesting.
And so we're somewhere in between the two. And so I think for us, the system, so the way we built the system, the way we build our walls, the way we clip things together, has allowed us to be efficient on labor and also choose the right materials to be able to be in a really sweet spot in the market and deliver faster and more cost effectively than some of the guys on the other side of the spectrum.
I mean, you've raised a little bit of capital for it. You want to raise a lot more.
Yeah.
You talked to me a little bit about that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's almost unlimited capital you could theoretically need for this.
Yeah.
Unless you can maintain this model of constantly keeping it off your balance sheet.
Yep.
I mean, but that's got to be a constant struggle.
Yeah. So for me, I would say we're a low CapEx business, and so the big money's up front, which is hard for investors to stomach because okay, you have nothing. You want me to put all of this money now? Why can't I give you some now and some later?
Yep.
And so for me, you know how I am. Yeah. I like high growth, fast growth. So it has to be fast. And so I would say, where is all the cost coming from? It's working cap as a percentage of revenue. So with construction or with manufacturing, often we get progress payments. Right? And so you get deposit payment when you've done X amount and Y amount, and then, there's a 10% holdback, and on delivery, it is what it is. And so if we do $100 million in revenue, 10% holdback, or 10% working cap, 15% working cap, that's $15 million. And so this is where the big cash needs come from. And so people say, well, why don't you bank finance it? Yeah. Well, I'm a startup. So the bank finances based on cash flow. That doesn't happen until later on. And so I would say going forward, we won't need a lot of money. It's just the startup to get us going, and then off to the races.
What kind of investors do you think you need?
So I always love institutional investors. Why I say that, they create more stability in the market ultimately. So I would like to take the company public at some point in time. You know, there's been, I don't think any companies in Canada that have gone public with a female CEO and CFO. And so I'd like to be first. Not so much for ego, but for setting the path for other women who want to do it, saying you can, it's possible. Because right now it's not, because no one's done it. No one's done it. So I would like to do that. And so, of course, retail money could be a lot easier to raise from, especially from this market. But then it also creates a lot of, stock fluctuations when things go up and down in the market. And ideally, we'd have 70% institutional, 30% retail. I think that's a good mix for us.
How do you balance the amount of time you're going to commit to the philanthropic side of what you're doing?
Yeah.
And then also, just as you just said, an important thing to you is really actually advancing women and doing it in, I just did it so you can do kind of way. You're not advocating.
No.
You're doing.
I'm doing it. I'm showing you that it's possible.
But a lot of people struggle with, okay, I obviously want to do those things, and I want to have a triple bottom line, and I want to have, in this case, a cause of advancing women, particularly in construction and manufacturing.
Yep.
How do you decide how to balance your time between all those things?
So,
because, I'll just say, like, you could probably make a lot more money if you said, this is going to be just this, and I'm going to just sell these things for as much as I can. And, if it should be a male CFO, it'll be a male CFO. If it should have you actually said at the top of this conversation, should I put in a male CEO?
Yeah.
How do you make those decisions?
So I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Okay.
I think a lot of people think as ESG, very complex topic that people make even more complex when they start to think about it. And
a lot of bullshit too.
And a lot of crap.
Yeah.
So a lot of companies use ESG as a tick the box exercise. Oh, I did it.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a female. I'm good, right? For us, it's fundamentally ingrained in the mission of the company, so it's hard to ignore that. And so I treat it the same way as I treat everything else, bite size. We have goals that are bite size, that are attainable and achievable, and then those goals change over time and grow over time, and we have bigger goals. And so when I think of ESG, we start with governance. So good governance doesn't mean unprofitable growth. It means profitable growth. And so we have to be profitable. That's part of good governance. I need to show shareholder return. That's part of good governance. So when I think of ESG, I think about profitability, not profitability. I also think about, from a governance perspective, we have 50% female management, 50% female board of minorities. Unheard of.
Yeah.
But
in any industry.
Not manufacturing. Forget it. But we set that goal, and I believed it was a bite-sized goal from the beginning, and so. Now, is it hard to maintain? Absolutely, because we have investors coming in. I want a board seat. I want a male. And so I push back and I say, look, if you want to put someone on the board, please consider our ESG goals. You said ESG is important to you. I made you fill out an ESG questionnaire. You said it's top of mind. And so now you're going to do what we do and say.
You're not going to talk, you're going to do.
You're going to do like we do. And so we push a little bit on that front. And so these are bite-sized goals. And then on the social side, we talk about the UNDP Sustainability Development Targets, so providing healthcare to all, which is ingrained in our mission. So this is easy for us. But what we do is look at all of the goals. What do we meet now? What can we do better at? What can we achieve later? And start to attach numbers to them. And then on the environmental side,
first last note, is there a number that you're prepared to give up? Is that how you think about it? Like, not give up. Is it an amount or percentage that you're prepared to invest in achieving that objective?
So I would say invest, yes, but invest over time, maintaining profitability of the company.
Got it.
Absolutely. You have to invest to make it better. So going to the environmental, we talk about manufacturing process. Manufacturing processes are dirty. Yes, modular is cleaner, but so we think about what can we invest to make the manufacturing process cleaner. We use aluminum panels now. I'm looking at a hemp-based panel that's more environmentally friendly. Can we replace one with the other? So, but that takes time. I'm not going to kill myself because I can't do it today. I need to focus on growth, getting the company to where it needs to go, and then having enough money to reinvest and redevelop. Also, where we're manufacturing, can we make the factories more energy efficient? Can we change the HVAC systems? But these are things that happen over time, bite-sized, one day at a time, one goal at a time, and get there eventually.
So is that really the message, is that it's that you're just looking at all aspects of your venture, all aspects of your operations, and you're just ensuring that you and the team are just asking the questions on down to a panel.
That's
Can it
right.
be aluminum or hemp? Down to that panel.
Yep.
Just make sure the question we are asking and we're following up on it.
And ingraining it in the company culture.
That we should be continuing to ask and
We
figuring it out ultimately.
Right. And even hiring. So
Yeah.
we have diverse
Yeah.
management.
Yeah.
There's no reason why we shouldn't have a diverse workforce. I think when you don't have diverse management, it's hard to attract a diverse workforce because they look at management and say, they're not like me,
Right. Yeah.
And so even hiring plans to say we really need to consider having diversity in the workforce, and it's just ingraining all of these things in the company
One of the
culture.
things I was most proud of, Sabrina, in all of my years of operating as a CEO, as a founder CEO, is at the point where we sold the business, there were 64 different nationalities, in a company of 2,000 people, whatever it was. I was so proud of that, right? It was just so, a snapshot of the Canadian population. You could put it under a microscope, our operation, and it was truly reflective of the Canadian population. And I wasn't nearly as methodical or scientific about it as you, but I really believe that diversity of thought made us a much more exceptional company.
100%.
It definitely did.
And I think age, gender, race, all of that stuff allows for innovation. Because if it's all the same thought process, I look at, all of us, all my Italian friends, we all think the same. Like, let's not fool ourselves.
right.
We all sort of have these ideas that we
right.
follow. But when you start to put different age groups, different experience levels, different cultures in the mix, all of a sudden innovation changes. Like, ideas change, the way people interact changes. And I think it's so, so important to do. And we're lucky because we live in a very multicultural place. And so our labor force is naturally more multicultural.
Thanks, Sabrina.
No problem. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Trailblaze. Would love to hear from you. Tweet me or comment on LinkedIn or Instagram and share what you took away from this episode. This show was produced by Creator Club Studios. You can start creating today at creatorclubstudios.com.